Have you ever taken up someone on an offer of, well, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know? And if so, how did it end up? Years ago, when my dad died, his right-hand man at work offered to do anything to help us. We found out we had to move on a 24 hours notice, 400 miles away. Mom was too hesitant to ask. We didn't have any options on so little time, so I insisted she call him. He shows up not 4 hours later with literally everyone from his job site, with all their pickups, and a few small moving trucks/trailers. We vacated within 24 hours easily. I've completely lost touch with them, but I'll never forget them for doing that. It was completely surprising to me because that guy had complained about my dad quite a few times, but always helped him out, even when doing personal things for him on his off days. A complainer who tells his grievances to your face is reliable. You know where they stand and you can work things out. A disgruntled person who will spew poison at your back without ever trying to work stuff out is where the real danger lies. A relative and an acquaintance needed help recovering family photos from a broken PC. I was going to do him a quick repair and bill the guy, but I felt really bad for him, so I took the extra time to consult him about backing up data and suggested an external drive. We found one for him. He was waffling on the price, so I cut his bill down a bit and told him to just order it while I was there. At that point, I think he realized I wasn't benefiting from any further contact, and he offered to help me out if I ever needed a hand with anything electrical, as he was a retired electrician. Short version is, I had some light switches that when flickered, would flicker several other rooms' nearby lights. I asked this guy if he could come assess what I needed and what it should cost for me whenever he had time. He came over for about 30 minutes, tinkered with the wall plates, and said, I don't know, then went home, having repaid his blood debt. One time, my dad told me to change this light bulb in my house, and it was pretty high up, and I definitely needed some help so I wouldn't fall to my death. These Jehovah's Witness guys knocked on my door, give their pitch, and then they end it with, thanks for talking to us. Is there anything we can help you with? So I asked, actually, would you guys mind helping me change the light bulb? And they were more than happy to help me out. Super nice guys. My dog put her head through one of the panes of glass in my front door, trying to eat some Mormons once. They were super apologetic and insisted on fixing it. One stayed and helped clean up, while the other ran around the corner to a glass shop. When he got back, I gave him the tools he asked for, and he had the broken plane fixed in under 45 minutes. I just sat and talked with the guy. Number one, about life, while he played with the dog that tried to kill him. I'm not religious, which I told them, and they said, that's fine, and they didn't want to force anything on me I didn't want. All in all, they were some of the nicest people I've ever come across. My mom passed away when I was a kid, and me and my sibling are moving out of my dad's place. He doesn't have many friends, but I discovered when I came over a while back that he gets weekly visits from Jehovah's Witnesses. They talk about spiritual literature for 5 minutes and give my dad some pamphlets, then spend about an hour watching my dad show them around his garage and chatting about other life events. I know unwanted spiritual advances are kind of shitty, but their conduct has always warmed my heart, and I think has meant a lot to my dad, who doesn't consider himself religious. The missionaries that visit his house are very warm and polite. All of the time. I do favors for people, and people do favors for me. It works so nice. The trick is to tell that to people yourself, and when they take you up on it, deliver. Last time I needed help and reached out when I bought a giant IKEA closet, and the seller and I realized that there is no way we can take it apart and load it into the move truck in the time window we had. Called a buddy I rarely meet in person. We text a lot and send memes, that's it. Called him up and said, Sleazy, can you help me with the closet real quick? I'm at blank address blank. He just answered, sure, drove 35 minutes, helped for 10 to 15 minutes, had a beer, and drove back home. I'd do the same for him. I had twins 3 months ago. I took all the help. I am taking all the help. Some great advice I got was this. If someone offers help, give them 3 options, an easy, medium, and hard. For example, would you be willing to bring me coffee, help with laundry, or watch the girls for a few hours while I take a nap. That way, they choose and you don't feel like you're putting them out. It's been amazing. People genuinely love being there for others, and realizing I can take help has been a huge area of growth for me. As a mom of 3 singletons, this is incredible advice. I love the easy/medium/hard option. Some people have the kindness to help, but maybe not the ability or skill, in the case of helping with the babies, to do very much. You get help either way, and the giver feels like they've contributed. The option 3 is great advice. It's like when people ask what you want for your birthday/Christmas, but they don't say how much they're willing to spend, so you don't want to suggest anything that costs a lot, in case it's too much, but they're too polite to say that's more than they wanted to spend. People choose. The best way is to make a list and then let people choose. Out of curiosity, which of the 3 options do people usually choose the most? And has anybody been the real MVP and taken on all 3? A few years ago, I was going through a rough patch, and one night I got caught up late at work. I was in a panic about letting my dog out and getting her dinner because my break was only 20 minutes and I lived across town. A friend lived nearby and I asked her to take out the dog and feed her. The friend sent me a pic of my pup happily prancing in the yard. A pretty simple favor in the grand scheme of things, but the peace of mind in that moment and time in my life was worth so much. It also made me feel better about asking for help when I need it. My friend was happy to do it, and it made a huge difference for me. I learned I wasn't a burden for needing help sometimes. I'm the opposite situation. My best friend drives an hour to work, and his girlfriend unexpectedly had to leave to go offshore immediately. So he asked me to let their dog out. Absolutely, yes, didn't even hesitate. I offered to continue to let that dog out while his girlfriend was offshore. That turned me into noticing the dog standing by the door next to his leash. Oh, he wants to go for a walk? So I started walking the dog, and that turned into, oh, he keeps pulling on the leash and wants to run. So I started taking my running clothes and used that as motivation to run. Before I knew it, I had run 5 consecutive days in a row. Last time I did that was never in my life, so I had to keep that streak going, even after his girlfriend returned from offshore. I'm now day 29 consecutive days. My goal is 30 to make this a lifestyle change. My then pregnant wife started bleeding from somewhere, down there, at about 20 weeks. Having suffered a miscarriage before, we both had obvious fears. The closest family was an hour away. We called 3X Normie friends at 11 p.m. at night to see if they can watch our 2-year-old on the monitor while family arrived. No answers. Jumped into a Discord group chat where a few old WoW guildies were hanging out, playing some Apex. Asked one who I knew lived close by, who was the father to 2 girls already, and would have understood/been safe. He was there in under 5, and we were on our way to the hospital in no time. Absolute bro. No miscarriages, just a little bit of blood coming from the placenta. Second baby girl delivered 18 weeks later with 10 little fingers and 10 little toes. Sorry for the stealing your Apex buddy, boys. Aw, this is so sweet. My mom was really ill while pregnant with me, and my dad's dad and stepmother came from India for a visit. As soon as my mom got sick, my step-grandmother decided to leave, and no amount of convincing could make her and my grandfather stay and watch my sister while my dad shuttled my mom to the hospital and worked his full-time job. This was really rude considering my dad sent them money regularly after he moved to America. My mom ended up being in the hospital for over a month after she gave birth, and I still hear about what a hard time my dad had trying to take care of the 3 of us without any support. We had plans to hang out, and I canceled because I got very sad. I needed someone to be with me while I broke down, and I didn't want to bother anyone while sad. But I asked if they could come anyway, and they came. They stayed. They listened, and they didn't judge me in the slightest. They even checked up the next few days and met up with me again. I was so worried that I was burdening them, and I have really bad anxiety about being too much, but they made me feel so normal and justified in those moments. It made me recognize that my anxiety is just that, anxiety. This reminds me of one of the times I broke down and sobbed in front of my boyfriend at the time, now an ex that I'm still good friends with. My anxiety was awful. I think exams were coming up, and I was over at his house. When the stress got the best of me, he laid down next to me and watched the clouds out of his window, describing things we could see in them, like houses or dragons. It definitely helped me calm down, and looking back, it taught me that nobody can fix my mental illness, but they can support me through it. Still makes me tear up when I think about that day. It's very nice to feel so loved. They listened and didn't judge me in the slightest. Sometimes, all we need is just to feel our emotions, to allow ourselves to have that feeling of vulnerability around those we trust. I'm so glad you got to have that experience. I hope you're doing better now. In my experience, people mean it. My wife got a new job and we were leaving town. Good friends offered to help. Our oldest son didn't want to switch schools for senior year. He stayed with them for his senior year. A friend of mine who did senior portrait photography was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I'm an art photographer. I told him that I'd do anything to help. He said he didn't want to leave his clients in a lurch. I spent about 3 months finishing his season. My friend with pancreatic cancer was supposed to get married in June, but the doctors told him he might not make it to June, or be in any shape to get married than if he did. Everybody pulled out all the stops to make his wedding happen fast. The venue, the caterer, and especially the photographer, who we didn't know, but whose work we admired. She was originally supposed to handle just shooting and delivering raw files. She found a videographer who volunteered to do it free, added a second shooter, and she did the editing. I'm a chef, and I had a wine dinner with a special paired 5-course menu. My salesperson fucked up very badly and forgot to put my order in, so it wasn't picked that morning, as it should have been. I called her asking where the hell my food was, and she was being a twat about it, as usual, trying to blame it on me. I sent her a screenshot of the order I'd put in the previous day, screamed at her to get me my order within the hour or I'd switch vendors, and started prepping everything I could without the product from that truck. She showed up a little while later with the order shoved in her car and her husband. Guess they'd been out together somewhere eating lunch when I'd so rudely interrupted. He was a chef at a different restaurant and we knew each other vaguely. He asked if there was anything he could do to help. Of course I said, no, I got it, but was clearly very harried, ripping into the boxes, trying to put the order away quickly so I could get to work. He stopped me and said, seriously, give me something to do. So I reluctantly asked him to make me a dressing and gave him a list of things I needed chopped. He tied on an apron and started prepping with such a big smile and a great attitude, and it really calmed me down. He was only there for about 45 minutes or so, but his chill breeziness helped me take a breath and refocus. I was a new chef at the time and took things a little too seriously. I've tried to emulate his calm demeanor and can-do attitude with my cooks ever since. From one chef to another, you have my respect and admiration. Well done, I humbly give you my vote. If you find yourself ever in South Africa, please contact me. Would love to send you love through our grapevine. A family friend of ours owned 2 restaurants at the time, and one was local and very hidden, so only locals really went. During this year, a young girl in town had cancer and needed to raise money for treatment. They decided to do a pancake breakfast fundraiser at the restaurant that day, where all the proceeds would go to the girl's family. My family and a friend of mine, we were 12, came and ate pancakes, and the place got really busy because the news team came by to report on it. It was getting to be too much for the owners, so my siblings, friend and I asked if there was anything we could do to help. I didn't know if I could because we were young, but we offered. At first, they didn't want us to worry, but we insisted, and they asked if we could wait on tables and handle the dishes. We were there all day and practically dropped dead when we got home. But in the end, they raised more than enough for the treatment, so it was a success. This was my mother's celebration of life last June. There were tons of cousins and extended family I'd only met once or twice, but I was in charge of the event, so I chatted nicely with almost everybody. Plenty of people told me, "You're running around so fast, let me know if you need help." I smile and shake my head and move on because, I got this. But my sister had gotten delayed, so she didn't have time to mold her mints. At the same time, there were 4 kids running around that I was trying to wrangle, and I was notified that both bathrooms' trash cans were overflowing. So I found the 2 people who had most enthusiastically offered to help and gave them tasks. It was perfect. The one I thought was my cousin at the time even stepped up to help with a couple more things after the mints were finished. I have literally no idea who either of these people were, even now, but I am extremely grateful they were willing to pitch in. Oh man, I just remembered a good one for this. Winter 2014. I was at some big indoor music festival in New York City. I went with 4 people, only knowing one of them beforehand. There were 3 other people I knew of vaguely, but had never met. When we all got on the subway, one of them took a second to give me her number, in case I need anything during the show. Fast forward a decent chunk into the night, I end up getting sexually assaulted at the show. I was able to escape from this dude who was twice my size, sprint through the venue down like 2 floors of stairs, and sob to security guards about what had happened and that this dude tried to drag me out of the venue until I was able to escape. They didn't care. So I called the girl I had just met that was a friend of a friend. All I knew was that she was somewhere on the top floor while the headliner was performing, and no one else was answering their phone. She did. She found me. She called the cops, she identified him, got him arrested, and then sat with me in this cold New York police department, giving me all her warm clothes while I wept and froze while answering the cops' questions. I ended up winning the case, and she is my absolute best friend to this day. I owe her everything. I was sick with the flu and had a 104 fever, and was complaining about how miserable I was to a friend of mine, and how I was thinking about going to the emergency room because nothing was helping. He told me to let him know if I needed anything. I asked if he would come with me to the hospital. He hopped in his car and drove 25 miles to pick me up and take me to the emergency room. He then stayed with me for 6 hours and helped me when I needed to use the bathroom and everything because I was so sick I couldn't help myself. Fast forward 3 years, and we have been dating for 2.5 years and just moved in together this past March. The care I saw the night he came through for me as a friend opened my eyes to how kind and caring he was, and led me to eventually asking him out on a date. Best flu ever. What a sweet story. Reminds me of a friend of mine who, during her first date with this guy she casually knew, developed such severe abdominal pain, he eventually drove her to the ER. He stayed with her throughout the night, even though she told him many times, "I'm okay, you can go home." She was mainly embarrassed because the diagnosis was a bowel obstruction, and, well, how better to impress a guy than having a bowel problem on your first date? Anyway, he called in sick to work, and the next morning, he was waiting for her in the recovery room while she came back from surgery. I had to get rabies shots once after being bitten by a dog on a hiking trail. I didn't react well and felt like I had a bad cold for a few weeks. I told my boss that's why I seemed less energetic, and she told me to let her know if there was anything she could do. I asked if I could head home early because I wasn't feeling well, and she sternly said, "That's not what I meant." Don't know why she even bothered offering to help me if she wouldn't let me go a couple hours early. I was neglected as a kid and would sleep over at my friend's house often. She was in college and I was still in high school, but her family welcomed me into their home whenever I needed a place to stay. I remember the mother always packed me a lunch for school and welcomed me with such warmth and kindness. As a kid, many people, sometimes people I barely knew, have been so incredibly kind to me as an adult. I always make sure everyone in my life knows I am here to help with whatever they need. It was my partner's best friend's wedding day, and he was the best man. I had to let them know that I was there to help with anything they needed, as I was not part of the bridal party, but was there early. There was an issue where the venue's music system was broken, and they were absolutely frantic about it, as it would have spoiled the ceremony. I suggested I could quickly blast home, pick up our CD player speaker unit, and use that. I ended up being the person to make sure the music came/went off at the right time for the ceremony, and it ran totally smoothly. They were super grateful, and I was very happy to have been useful. One of my bridesmaids' husband did that sort of thing for us. He figured his wife was busy all morning getting ready, and he didn't have anything else to do, so he did some little things we needed. I think he ended up checking in our luggage to the hotel during pictures. Nothing mission critical, but things that were nice not to worry about. Not so much a, how can I help? But this is what we're gonna do. I got slated for a layoff at my job. Next day, I fuck up my ankle walking to my car to head to work. I was working a transload operation, heavy lifting, crawling, climbing, etc. Couldn't do the job for a few days. My lead hand called me that night and asked if I could get to work tomorrow. Told him no way I could work. He snaps back that he didn't ask if I could work. He asked if I could get to work. Proceeded to go 20 minutes out of his way for the rest of my run to drive me to site, and came up with some BS busy work to keep me on payroll. Not only an amazing friend, but a hell of a leader. When I worked for a psychiatric hospital, we had a patient that had suffered a traumatic brain injury and was in a permanent state of psychosis as a result. She had a history of violence and had been passed around so many group homes that it took us more than 100 days to find another placement for her. This person had nothing and no one other than a public guardian. Over time, we built trust and rapport with her. Episodes of violence dwindled down to zero. We all pitched in to bring her clothes, beauty supplies, and other essentials to make her long admission more bearable. When we finally did find her placement in a group home that was more than 2 hours away, we took time to drive down and visit her regularly until she'd adjusted to her new home and staff. Last I heard, she's doing great and is now deemed stable enough to come and go from her home as she pleases. I was planning my exit from an extremely violent relationship. I asked my family and my best friend for help. Of course my family helped, but my best friend, oh boy. She put herself in an immediate life-threatening situation so that I could get out alive, and I owe her my life. I'm not even ashamed to tell everyone. I know how much I love her and thank her. She thinks it's no big deal. It's just what friends do. Oh no, she went above and beyond to keep me alive. Thankfully, she wasn't hurt. Scared and shaken, but not hurt. I would have died that night, if not for her and her quick thinking. My best friend, since middle school, helped me get out of a horrible relationship, along with my family. I don't think I can ever thank her enough. Aren't we lucky to have friends like that? Good luck to you. One of my best friends in undergrad got really sick our junior year and kept having episodes that required a hospital stay. He was totally healthy before, so it was a shock when suddenly the doctors thought he potentially had brain cancer. I was the only one of our friends that had a car, so for several weeks he would text me it was happening again and asked if I could drive him to the hospital. He was always really chill about it and asked casually, like it wasn't a big deal, but I never hesitated to drop whatever I was doing or leave class to drive him over there. Then I would come back and pick up some of our other close friends, and we would spend the day keeping him company there. Luckily, everything ended up okay, but it was a pretty scary month. A random dude on LinkedIn reached out to me. I replied that I didn't know him, but would love to meet for coffee. We hung out for coffee one day. Turned out, he's really well connected to my field and was sincere about making connections with people. I stayed in touch with him every few months for a year. Then when I got laid off due to COVID, I took him up on his offer. He helped me tweak my LinkedIn profile and resume, then pushed out a marketing message to everyone in his network and another specific message to all the recruiters in his network. I had more calls and interviews than I could handle for a couple weeks and accepted a job offer within a month or so. Most people just say this shit and don't stick by it because they think it's the socially correct thing to say. I learned this when I was 25 and my dad died, leaving me in charge of an estate that was stuck in probate court. I worked full-time as a firefighter and had to take care of 3 homies and a farm. I always needed help and seldom got it. My best friend died. A girl who knew both of us pretty well messaged me on Facebook afterward and said, "I know you two were close. If you need anything, let me know." Due to grief, it felt good just to talk to someone, so I vented a bit that he really was one of the closest people to me, and that it felt difficult to focus on anything I used to enjoy because he was usually a part of it. She responded with, "To be honest, I didn't think you had a GF already," and signed off. I've never heard from her again. Bitch. I broke my ankle while renovating our house. I was out of work for a couple weeks and my husband was still working full-time and working on getting our house back in a livable condition. A friend checked in and said the typical, "If there's anything I can do to help," offer. Since she didn't work a normal 9 to 5, I asked if she could be a huge help and drive me to my doctor's appointment. She said she couldn't. No reason, no real sympathy. We don't talk anymore.